when you look at the Jesuit sign with the writing, and then you've got the cross, and interestingly enough, on the Jesuit sign you get 3 nails. Now, Kev, how many nails was Jesus crucified with? Is this, because this is, I believe this is up for debate.
Well, would it not have been 3?
2 through the leg, one
through the 2 feet, and then 2 through the hands.
Now, people say that there was a 4th used to put a sign above him.
Ah.
So is this a sign of a divide? I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It's just something I noticed because it allowed me to relate to that. But coincidentally, right, Machiavelli, he was just he came from just south of Florence, I believe, and he was in and around the 1500s. About the 1500s. But what fits in with the timeline with him that I put, like, just coincidentally that rang through my head when I was watching this, was him and his writing, especially The Little Prince, which is a manuscript of how to control, manipulate people, i.e. make them fear you, not love you. And if you go and read this, or go and even read the theories that come out of this book. Now, I'll sign. Here's the thing: where Tony Blair, a year after getting elected, went and visited Machiavelli's house. Lots of people carry around this book, The Little Prince. People who are into their literature and stuff, go and read this book, man. It'll tell you how to take over the world. That's what it is, and that's why it was so controversial at its time. And then, mate, this book fits into the time frame as the Jesuits getting created in the 1500s as well. But that was just a wee curveball. We'll get back to George Square because I wasn't even researching that. It was just
that was me throwing you off on a tangent, man, down a rabbit hole.
Right, so where was it in George Square anyway? Was I finished with... Oh, right, Rabbie Burns, because I said I'd need to...
Yeah, because I think you've got something on the lodge numbers of Rabbie Burns, I believe.
Well, I'm on the website now. If you go to Lodge St David, right, here's one that will blow you away, 133.org. You'll come to Lodge St David, Turbolton. Now, you go and look at that, Kevin, try and see how to pronounce that, because I'm scunnered that I can't even pronounce the Scottish name. I would say Mouchline... I can't even say it. Mouchlin.
Mauchline.
Mauchline. That's it, mate. Mauchline, I would believe.
We'll go with Mauchline.
Right, Mauchline, number 133. Now, you can... It says where to find them. And if you go and... I think if you click on the Rabbie Burns bit, it gives you a rundown of... Because, but, mate, at this time... This is people always make the mistake of calling Freemasonry a secret society, but it wasn't a secret society. It was a society with secrets.
Definitely. I mean, you just
because it was a very open society.
Of the Masons.
Its heyday, it was a very open society in the sense that the buildings had big compasses and set squares on it. It was just the inner workings that weren't revealed, and it was when people started getting uncomfortable with that, they started becoming more reclusive. But that's a cracking wee website. You'll get some of the history. If you go on to your Google Earths, go to, this is a different one, which I believe also Burns went to, but this is just my own conjecture, but go and check it out and you'll see why. And this is actually in a town where Burns, Burns was in a wee village. His family stayed in a farm near Turbolton. And then when Burns' dad died, beforehand they kept to themselves. After his dad died, they then sort of got involved with the community in Turbolton. It wasn't long before Burns became a Mason, and then things started going well for him. And if you go Tarbolton, T-A-R Bolton, B-O-L-T-O-N, and that's in Ayrshire, Scotland. Go and check that just before we go out to break, and you'll see the main lane, and I'll have a look at it during the break and get the street name and stuff. So, anything you want to get in before we go out to break, Kev?
No, I'm just trying to absorb half of the stuff you've gone through there, Kip. I'm going to have to actually go up and take a walk around these places myself.
Oh, do you know what? Do you know what I'll need to get into? I'll need to go into the Rabyburn stuff and listen to this. The Romantic movement, Romanticism. That's countering the Age of Enlightenment, and Robbie Burns says like he contributed to the creation of liberalism and radicalism. Happy days, mate. But hey, he was voted best Scot in STV, man. So it must be true.
And hey, Hitler was once voted Time Man of the Year.
And I don't know, man. I'm not doing this deliberately to have a go at anybody, man. Because Burns was a chap, mate. He had hundreds of kids. He's got over 600 living relatives.
One of Scotland's most massive figures, I would say, Kip.
I've just never looked at this guy's rap sheet before, and I now am. And alrighty, welcome back to GUNN, Glasgow Underground News Network. My name is Kip. You'll get me over on YouTube under Kip's Clips, Kip 1883, and Freedom News Hub 2.0. And as always, my co-host on GUNN is Kev. You'll get him over on YouTube under TruthTube451 and TruthTubes, I believe, as well, and another one that you'll probably catch somewhere on his channel. Now, just before we went out, Kev, what we were talking about, now this is the last segment, so is there any points of news that we should touch upon before we...
You were actually you were promising myself and the listeners you were going to get into the fact, Robbie Burns and the Romanticism.
All right, aye.
See, I needed to remind you there, Kip. It's all right.
Is there anything on like the mainstream? I swear to God, I've not watched news in a few days.
Well, it must have been a pretty slow news day yesterday in the UK, because all day long it was just news about how there had been a computer glitch with the air traffic control system and airports were busy. That was the major news.
Seriously, mate, did they not have bad weather to report about, mate?
Nah, it must have calmed down long enough. But see the bad weather, Kip, see what really annoyed me? We had Scotland, 142 mile an hour winds. But when it was Scotland getting hit by the storm, it was just every hour you had maybe a couple of wee words about it. But then as soon as the storm moved down into England, boom, it was 24/7. Oh, it was hell on earth. But no, us pesky Scots, we can just get on with it. We're used to it.
Right, so I've got my book, I've got my notes, my timeline notes back here, man, so I can get back into it. So we've got Robbie Burns, right? Now, he was considered to be one of the pioneers of the Romantic movement, and after his death, I'll just stick us in the now, was considered to inspire liberalism and socialism. Now, back then, you could argue that was a good thing, but I'm just saying the facts as I found them, because this is the first time I've looked into Robbie Burns. Now, Romanticism, some people argued it was in revolt to the Industrial Revolution, but people with tinfoil hats on, like myself, I think say it was more of a revolt to the aristocratic, social and political norms of the time, and that was like classified as the Age of Enlightenment. Now, it wasn't an ism, but what was the Age of Enlightenment? Now, I don't know this myself because I've not researched the timeline further back, but just glimpsing in, you could say that the Age of Enlightenment was classed as like sort of an emphasis on like reason and individualism, not tradition or superstition, right? So it was more about the science and getting
focused on the individual as opposed to the collective that gets forced at us now, Kip.
Mm-hmm. And it was like one of the first things that came up when I looked into it was very much against intolerance, and their biggest target, and that was the wording I read somewhere, was the Catholic Church. Right, because they were obviously very much into tradition, superstition, intolerance, so on and so forth. Now, so you've got Robbie Burns, who's linked with this Romanticism. Now, go and look at Romanticism as well. It's very much linked, and people can't separate it with the movement that resulted in the French Revolution. And a lot of people accept the French Revolution was a Masonic revolution. It could be argued that the literature at the time found its way into the Americas as well. At the time, the romantic movement or romanticism, all the literature and movement and music. Now, if you want to even go and talk about the real power players, the people who create culture and really pull the strings and who have socially engineered a lot of things that we see around us, you could say that they were pulling the strings, and not in the sense that, because Burns wrote before he was a Mason, but when he was a Mason, that's when his letters started turning up. That's when his poets. I mean, he was ready to jack it in and move to Jamaica, and then the first thing that he published in Kilmarnock got picked up. And at the time, Glasgow was where all the industry, money, tobacco, sugar was. All the intellectual stuff was in Edinburgh. But the fact that, and this is commonly known, the fact that Burns was a Mason, that's why he was more welcomed when he went into the Edinburgh circles and welcomed into the literature, because there was obviously like a class divide between Edinburgh and Glasgow. And it's hard, well, not Edinburgh and Glasgow, sorry, because Burns wasn't Glaswegian, he came from Ayrshire, he was West Coast. But there was still that same stigmatism that existed.
Still a divide to this day, East and West.
Well, surprise, mate. Guess where? Do you think Burns went to a state education, mate? He was obviously educated with his dad. He was homeschooled. Right? That's why the guy was so well versed in literature and stuff. And he was writing poetry for a long time. He was going to give up because he was making no money with it. He published something in Kilmarnock. It got picked up, and like in those days, it was an overnight success. But obviously, that was like months. And he literally got word that it was a success just before he was ready to emigrate to Jamaica. But right, so that's a wee bit about Burns. So if you go and look into the Romantic movement, it definitely is linked to the French Revolution. I've not looked into it more than people say that was the literature that influenced the.
I was just going to say, Kip, was that the literature at the time that was passed around to?
Well, what I was going to argue was like people like Burns, poets, people who wrote music, other people as well. I'm not just blaming all this on Burns. They were the MTV of their day. Like, does that make sense? What I'm saying? They were
totally, man. Yeah.
And for the people who really are controlling the culture, creating the society, they need to manipulate people without knowing them. Get manipulated through cool songs, through pop music, through Justin Bieber, through the Beatles, the Stones.
Things in print back in that time was the equivalent of that.
Okay, I heard a very disturbing thing that I was aware of, and I think it actually deliberately blocked out my head. The involvement Alistair Crowley had with, and you know this, with Inverness in the house that he had up there that was bought by that Led Zeppelin dude.
Yeah, Jimmy Page.
A lot of Alistair Crowley's connections to the Rolling Stones. Apparently, there's I might as well say this just to cover him. Allegedly, a woman was dead in a bathtub at some point. Man, I can't be the first person that said that.
And the Beatles, they've got him on the cover of their album.
They've got him on the cover. I mean, this guy influenced a lot of shit. So what was happening there? Was this a cultural boom? Was this like or was it a created thing that was given to us on a plate? Do you know what I mean? And then this is what I'm trying to. I think it's important to try and understand that then, and back when the French Revolution was happening, was like I'm only. This is a conspiracy theory. I've got my tinfoil hat on. I'm looking at what Robert Burns. I'm saying to myself, why has he got a statue in George Square? Let's look into it a wee bit of his history. First thing, he's a very renowned, worshipped Mason. Now, don't get me wrong. The Age of Enlightenment did include aristocracy, right? So I believe that this is an idea. Now the Masons ultimately wanted a corporate fascism. So you can't have that with monarchy and aristocracy. So I think the problem with the Age of Enlightenment, because it was bringing away people from God and more to science.